This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Oh, hello. Have you ever wanted to usher in a new age of humanity and elevate the species as the reclamation begins? Well, on the off chance that oddly specific scenario applies to you, or if you just want peace of mind while surfing the internet, then you'll want to check out NordVPN. For all the benefits of the internet, it isn't always the safest place. Luckily, NordVPN is more than equipped to protect you. With over 5,300 servers in over 60 countries, NordVPN can provide a secure connection to keep your data private while maintaining excellent internet speeds. And if you're, say, curious about the top streaming content on Australian Netflix, in addition to privacy and security, well, NordVPN can help with that too. Simply select from the list of Nord servers located across the world and instantly access content normally unavailable, from TV shows to movies, and even games. So if this sounds interesting to you, check out nordvpn.com/halocanon to start your 2-year plan, which includes 1 additional month at a huge discount. Best of all, with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no risk to you. I've been using NordVPN for over a year now on my PCs and phone, and I couldn't be happier. Sign up for your 2-year plan at nordvpn.com/halocanon today. Welcome back, Canonites, for the long overdue review of Halo Divine Wind. 4 years after the previous book in the Ferret saga of books, Divine Wind acts as a follow-up to Shadows of Reach and a sequel to Halo's Last Light and Retribution. Set in October 2559, mere months before the start of Halo Infinite, the book once again follows Veda Lopez and her ferrets, the Spartan 3's Ash G099, Olivia G291, and Mark G313, who have infiltrated the Keepers of the One Freedom and must stop them from activating the Halo Array. However, the Keepers of the One Freedom and remaining banished on the Ark aren't the only threats Veda and the Ferrets will have to contend with. If you haven't read this book yet and want to avoid spoilers, turn away now. I have a spoiler-free review on the channel if you're just looking for a recommendation. For everyone else, however, this is Halo Divine Wind. Before we get into the story proper, let's quickly recap what happened at the end of Shadows of Reach. Following the events of Halo Wars 2 Awakening the Nightmare, Atriox got his hands on an entanglement dish, a Forerunner device that allowed Atriox to contact Escharum in the Milky Way galaxy. He informed Escharum of a portal on Reach, and 3 banished clans were dispatched to find it, including the Keepers of the One Freedom. A Juro Hanai-led Covenant remnant, the Keepers still believed in the Great Journey and allowed humans into their ranks. On Reach, the Keepers eventually managed to find the portal hidden on the planet, and Atriox was able to return to the galaxy for his brief cameo in Halo Infinite. Wanting to visit the home of their gods, the leader of the Keepers, a Dokab named Castor, has his people board the Lich Atriox came through in, planning to leave for the Ark. Atriox orders one of his Blade Masters, a former Silent Shadow assassin named Inslan Gadogai, to cut down Castor, but his hand is stayed when 4 humans, Veda and her ferrets, train weapons on Gadogai. With the choice of either dying to the humans or dying on the Ark, Gadogai decides he has better chances with the Keepers and boards the Lich. And this is pretty much where our story begins. Keepers of the One Freedom hurtling through slipspace, a horde of banished waiting for them on the other end. As Castor and his pilots prepare to re-enter normal space, Gadogai is sent to the troop bay for his constant blasphemy and taunts. The Sangheili tells the other Keepers to strap in for re-entry, choosing a location where he'd have prime seating to watch the humans die, as he puts it. There's a sudden impact as the Lich re-enters normal space, and a short-sword bomber, an old one, is suddenly tearing into the hull of the Lich. Strangely, there's no visible outer hull damage. The short sword had essentially been around the same location the Lich re-entered normal space. As Veda pretends to search the pilot, she and Gadogai get into a small argument, Veda trying to make the Sangheili look suspicious while gathering intel about what's going on in the cockpit, and Gadogai acting on his own suspicions of Veda. Suddenly though, both are called to the flight deck. Upon arriving, they see a massive conflict between outdated UNSC vehicles and craft, the Banished, and to their shock, a Covenant remnant. For anyone who wasn't able to read Halo's Sacrifice, the short story originally restricted to a Walmart edition of Shadows of Reach but later released as a free PDF, The short story revealed that a faction of Covenant loyalists had been surviving within the Dreadnought, the Forerunner keyship that once sat at the center of High Charity. Now, that Covenant is active and, like the forces of the UNSC Spirit of Fire, trying to take control of the portal back to the Milky Way. Anyway, Gadogai is ordered to speak to Let Volier, the shipmaster from Halo Wars 2 and now commander of banished forces on the Ark, to try and get some fire off their backs. At the same time, Veda Lopez is commanded to speak to UNSC Command for the same purpose. She tries to get some intel out of Castor on the identity of the human forces, but he isn't too knowledgeable about the current circumstances. Both Gadogai and Veda are successful, Veda even managing to sneak in a message to have the UNSC fire upon her Lich, hoping to destroy the Keepers. Sparrowhawks are deployed to do just that, but a smart strategy from Castor and brilliant piloting from Krellis, the son of Castor's old second-in-command, Orsoon, keep them alive. The Lich ultimately crashes in a canyon not too far from Covenant forces. Nearby, Pavium and Vordis of the Longshield clan watch the Lich go down. Vordis tries to persuade his brother to go after the Lich, suspecting Atriox might be on board. After the events of Awakening the Nightmare, the Longshield clan had lost significant status. Only the discovery of that Forerunner entanglement dish saved the necks of Pavium and Vordis. Still, their clan has been seen as lowly, and Pavium sensed a challenge to his power coming. He would not move unless ordered. Suddenly, however, Let Volier contacts the brothers and orders their clan to investigate the crashed Lich, much to Vordis' delight. At the Lich's crash site, the Keepers begin evacuating the craft while Sparrowhawk autocannons fire from above. Taking advantage of the confusion, the Ferrets and Veda move away from the Lich, hoping to simply help clean up any Keeper survivors. Unfortunately, Longshield clan air support comprised of Banshees and Seraphs put those plans on hold. Still, Veda hopes that they can turn the Keepers and Banished against one another. Suddenly, a carnivorous lifeform emerges from the surrounding environment, a three-eyed insectoid organism later identified as a Kralladonk. Highly coordinated and surprisingly intelligent, any other plans are put on hold as everyone redirects their attention on the scarab-like bugs attacking them. And that's scarabs from the Mummy, not Halo. Only thanks to the sudden appearance of a Covenant craft are the Keepers saved. As the Covenant forces disembark from their Phantoms, many of them Gerald Hanai honor guards, Veda and the Ferrets are shocked to see a Sanshayum prophet. And not just any Sanshayum, but what they would later discover to be a prelate. For anyone unfamiliar, prelates are basically the Sanshayum equivalent of a Spartan, augmented and enhanced with Forerunner technology from within High Charity's sacred promissory. Prelates are warrior Sanshayum capable of taking on Sanghili, Gerald Hanai, and even Spartans. We first saw one appear in the novella Halo Shadows of Intent, which can also be found in the short story collection Halo Fractures. Though, prelates are actually first mentioned in a description for the map Gemini from Halo 2. Funny how a single word can come back as something so badass. The first meeting between Keepers and Covenant is tense, due especially to the prelates' beliefs that Keeper forces are truly allied with the Banished. Only the sudden appearance of an Oracle, an Archeon-class Ancilla named Intrepid Eye, is an alliance able to be formed. For a quick bit of backstory, Intrepid Eye was an Ancilla, or Forerunner AI, assigned to the Jot Krula support outpost on the world that eventually became Veda Lopez's homeworld of Gao. Jot Krula is the Forerunner name for the Maginosphere, a protective boundary around the core of Forerunner-controlled space. After her awakening on Gao, Intrepid Eye was captured and used by Oni for years, while Intrepid Eye herself did all she could to try and prepare humanity for the Reclamation, even utilizing the Keepers to do so. Oni eventually discovered Intrepid Eye's interference and used a swarm of dumb AI to overwhelm the Forerunner construct. It wasn't until Master Chief and Blue Team had arrived on Argent Moon, the facility Oni held Intrepid Eye at, that she was able to escape. Discovering Cortana's domination of the galaxy soon after, Intrepid Eye decided that the only choice now, the only way to make humans worthy of the mantle of responsibility, was to activate the Halos and use the resources on the Ark to make a human race worthy of the mantle. It would also have the bonus of burning away the domain Cortana relied on. And now, having transferred her code into the Prelate's hard light blade weapon, Intrepid Eye could command these two factions and put her plan into action. Gathering up the Keepers and their equipment, the Prelate, Das Basvad, leaves another Gerald Hanai in charge of the army, while his forces and the Keepers head for the Cartographer. Veda and the Ferrets soon appear as well, explaining away their absence while making sure to avoid being seen by Intrepid Eye. The group had encountered the Forerunner Ancilla on more than one occasion and didn't need her blowing their cover. Before departing, Veda and her Ferrets are allowed to search the crashed Lich for equipment, using the opportunity to plant a message on the body of the short sword pilot, hoping it might be found by the UNSC force on the Ark. Sadly, this message would never be received, instead found by Pavium and Vortis' forces as they search the crashed Lich. The message reveals Castor's plan and new alliance with the Covenant, which Vortis believes will be the perfect opportunity for their clan to regain its lost favor. Meanwhile, to avoid detection, the combined Keeper and Covenant force had been traveling low and at subluminal speeds to avoid detection. The resulting long trip allowed much time for Das Basvad and Castor to catch up. Castor fills in the Prelate on what's been happening in the galaxy since the fall of the Covenant, while Das tries to discern from Castor whether any additional San Shayum had survived the fall of High Charity. As we discover, Das had been part of a team that covertly evacuated a flotilla of San Shayum during the fall of High Charity, using the departing dreadnought to cover their actions. It had been the Prophet of Truth's plan to send these San Shayum to a shield world known as Cloister, where they'd be protected from the fires of Halo. After the array was fired, Truth and his San Shayum would emerge and rule the galaxy that remained. All the while, Veda is able to listen into these conversations thanks to a bug planted in the cockpit. As she listens in, she heard word of a banished Seraph nearby and a UNSC Pelican watching from the shadows. Given the Pelican's lack of activity, Veda figures they must not have received her message and decides on a new course of action. Wanting to avoid pursuit, the Phantoms land and it's decided that a group would continue to the Cartographer on Ghosts. When this happens, Veda and the Ferrets cause a fight to break out, hoping it'll cause some problems and maybe attract some attention. When that fails, the team is able to locate the UNSC Pelican and, using the targeting laser from Mark G313's Longshot DMR, inform the crew about the imminent Halo threat. This time, the message is received loud and clear. Suddenly, however, Veda finds an aggressor sentinel next to her and Inslan Gadogai calling her down from the dune she and her ferrets had been hiding on. Reporting to Gadogai, Veda is informed that the Oracle had requested her to be brought to the Cartographer site specifically. After a bit of squabbling, they eventually depart, Veda worried about how much longer their cover could realistically last. As Castor, Gadogai, Daz, Veda, and a couple other Geralhani make their way to the Cartographer, we get a little insight into Inslan Gadogai. As it turns out, he was born Azel Lamel, seems that Silent Shadow Blade Masters take on new names, and had once been primed to take control of his clan. He had even found someone he loved, a female named Olabisi. Sadly, Azel was betrayed, immobilized, and forced to watch as his entire line was ended and his love placed as the new clan matriarch, ensuring Azel couldn't seek revenge without risking the love of his life. Azel would go on to join the Silent Shadow, earning the name Inslan Gadogai and becoming a Blade Master. At one point he even went back to try and save his beloved, only to find that she hadn't taken her fate lying down and had risen to considerable power. Initially happy, Gadogai's heart would harden against Olabisi and the Blade Master feeling that she had betrayed him. Returning to the modern day, the flashback was all in service of Gadogai deciding whether he wanted to help Castor or save the galaxy. As Gadogai finishes his reminiscing, he's informed by Veda to wear his comm disc at Castor's direction. Upon tuning in, he hears the Dokab and Prelate arguing about the humans and the fight that recently broke out, Daz even saying that Olivia had been the one to start the fighting. Because of this, Daz wants to kill almost all the other humans, keeping only one alive. However, he's convinced to keep them all around, Castor and Gadogai affirming that killing any others will make the rest uncooperative. Reaching their destination, Veda is forced to lead the group in and bring them to the Cartographer, where an activation citadel, or Clarion facility as it's formally called, is revealed by a sub-monitor. In fact, it seems like the Ark has a number of Ancilla running around now, perhaps a result of the increased activity the installation has been seeing in the last few years. In addition to sub-monitors, the installation also features Facilitator and Caradone class Ancilla now, as if I needed more reasons to want a Halo Wars 3. Anyway, after the Citadel's location is revealed, the group rush back to the Covenant Phantoms, which are now under attack by banished aircraft. The aircraft retreat as the ghosts arrive and aggressors fight to protect the humans and the Phantoms, though one Phantom is lost during the battle. As they depart, Veda is now forced into one Phantom, while her ferrets are forced into another. As the Phantoms make for the Citadel, Gadogai and Castor talk in the cockpit, Gadogai trying to get Castor to realize that Veda and her ferrets are trying to sabotage his goals. Intrepid Eye chimes in as well, revealing that she's been able to identify Veda and the history she shares with Castor, i.e. the events of Halo's Last Light and Retribution. Castor is initially furious, ready to rip Veda apart himself, but Gadogai and Intrepid Eye are able to convince the Dokab to use this as an opportunity, one that begins with contacting the Prelate, then using Veda's listening bug, now controlled by Intrepid Eye, to lay a trap for both their UNSC and banished enemies. In the troop bay, Veda's bug suddenly activates and a conversation between Castor and the prelate comes through, the pair discussing bringing in heavy artillery to melt the massive block of ice that currently protects the entrance to the Citadel. Meanwhile, Pavium and Vortis have intercepted the same communications, though with Vortis' genius, they're able to figure out that the call for heavy artillery is a trap. In response, Pavium has most of his forces stand by to assault the Citadel as soon as it's discovered, while at the same time deploying Thalazon and his Seraphs to the site of the suspected trap. Thalazon was a chieftain with the Longshield clan and had been preparing to challenge Pavium's rule. To eliminate the threat to his power, Pavium planned to let Thalazon and his supporters be wiped out, or at least suffer some serious damage. Back with the Keepers and Covenant, their Phantoms begin to land hours ahead of the broadcast rendezvous. Upon landing, Castor orders Veda to gather her ferrets and provide overwatch. As Veda arrives at the second Phantom, the one carrying her ferrets, Daspas Vode inquires about where they'll be positioned, immediately making Veda even more suspicious than she already was. Once she's alone with the ferrets, Veda has them prepare for extraction. Once again using Mark's targeting laser to contact the UNSC Pelican that's been trailing them, they request an airstrike on the Phantoms, inform the crew of the Citadel's location, then request extraction. Meanwhile, the Keepers and Covenant, having noticed Mark's laser, order a strafing run on the last known position of Veda and her team before preparing to depart. Before they can, however, Veda and the ferrets attack, trying to kill as many Keepers and Covenant as possible, primarily targeting the two remaining human Keepers. While severe damage is inflicted, the Phantoms escape with the one remaining human, a true believer named Quimby. As the Phantoms escape, Veda and her ferrets are finally able to connect with the Recon Pelican that's been following them, finally free of the cover they'd been maintaining for 2 years. The Pelican crew take understandable precautions given that they have no positive identification on Veda or her squad, but are generally very polite and open. The team are able to strip off their Keeper armor, wash up, and even rest for a few hours. They're eventually woken by the Pelican's commander, a woman named Bare, and invited to watch the strike on what they believe to be a Covenant rendezvous. However, rather than Keepers and Covenant, they only find banished Seraphs, those led by Thalazon. Of the 10 fighters Thalazon had, only his survives and escapes. Realizing they've been tricked, Veda has the Pelican crew prepare to chase down the Keepers and Covenant. Now, there's a bunch of detail in this section that I skipped over for the sake of summary, but some of that stuff we absolutely need to talk about in detail. As noted, upon arriving on the Pelican, Veda and her ferrets are treated fairly well, but with some understandable skepticism, given that Spirit of Fire forces have no real way to authenticate their identities. As such, we get some rather interesting insight into what being undercover for 2 years really means. For example, when the entire team end up falling asleep after they wash up, Veda notes how long it's been since all 4 of them have felt comfortable enough to sleep at the same time. Another interesting moment is when Veda invites her Spartans to watch the strike against what they believe to be Keepers and Covenant. While Mark is eager to watch with Veda, Ash and Olivia pass, both feeling an odd sense of betrayal. They don't regret their mission, but after 2 years of living with the Keepers, the pair don't really like the idea of watching their deaths. This feeling is especially complicated for Olivia, who had to kill one of the human Keepers face to face. And while that wasn't exactly new for the Spartans or Veda, they'd never had to kill people they'd spent years pretending to be friendly with. In short, the book takes a good deal of time to lay out the potential psychological damage these Spartan 3s are either going through right now, or might have to deal with years down the line. Back to the story though, realizing that they have no chance of reaching the Citadel in time, the Recon Pelican makes an open broadcast with the coordinates for the site. Hoping the message might be intercepted by forces closer to the Citadel, the message is indeed picked up by the banished of the Longshield clan. Seeing little other choice, Pavium orders the Longshields to move on the Citadel. The ploy works, with banished forces creating a difficult approach for the joint Keeper-Covenant forces. With heavy artillery threatening what few forces they have, the Prelate and Castor evacuate the Phantoms, taking Gadogai, Quemby, and a handful of soldiers, making for a pinnacle structure near the Citadel. Veda and her ferrets, now hours overdue for their regular smoothers, drop from their Recon Pelican and bring the fight to the Keepers and Covenant, hoping to kill Quimby. Combined with select missile strikes, the plan is ultimately a success, Mark eliminating Quimby and most of the Keeper and Covenant forces on the ground killed. Those deaths also end up hurting Intrepid Eye, her process is still scattered across Keeper gear. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be enough. Believing Intrepid Eye could find a way to activate Halo without a Reclaimer, Olivia even bringing up what Master Chief had to do to Installation 04, Veda decides that she'll let herself be captured and, using a nanobug under her skin as a signal, call in a strike on the Citadel and those within. Once again, the plan is a success, Veda captured violently by Inslan Gadogai. Bringing her to the pinnacle structure, a light bridge activates, connecting the pinnacle to the citadel. The ferrets pursue, all the while trying to make it look like they want to rescue Veda. Upon reaching the citadel, Castor, the prelate, and their remaining forces are ambushed once more by the banished, Pavium and Vortis both present for this final assault. The banished force is defeated, and Pavium and Vortis left for dead after being thrown over the edge of the light bridge, though only Castor, Gadogai, the prelate, a Gerolhane honor guard named Arcus, and Veda survived the fight. Krellis, the last son of Castor's war brother Orsun, is left severely injured on the brink of death. Castor gives the young warrior a mangler and orders him to stay alive to alert the rest of them should humans follow. Inside the citadel, Gadogai tries one last time to convince Castor to turn away from the great journey, but is unsuccessful. In a strange turn of events, Gadogai has decided to aid Castor simply because he considers the Dokab to be a friend, and it seems that Inslan Gadogai values friendship quite a bit. It's definitely not the turn of events I was expecting from this book, but damn if I ain't on board. Arriving at the Citadel's control room, Veda calls out to the facility's Ancilla, claiming that it had been tricked by Intrepid Eye and that the Archeon-class Ancilla had been corrupted by the Logic Plague. A smart, if desperate move by Veda. The move doesn't put a stop to Intrepid Eye's plan, but it does buy enough time to slow her down, enough time for Veda to call in a mech strike on the Citadel. Intrepid Eye quickly takes over the Citadel's site and raises its defenses as the first mech round strikes. More soon follow, slowly chipping away at the Citadel's defenses. At the same time, Castor had finally been awoken to the true purpose of the Halos, the result of a discussion between Intrepid Eye and the Citadel's Facilitator-class sub-monitor. He literally tosses the prelate aside and condemns Intrepid Eye to die as he departs with Inslan Gadogai, his only remaining friend. Veda too is able to escape thanks to the help of Ash and Olivia. Sadly, not all ends so well. Outside the Citadel, an injured Mark G313 encounters a still-alive Das Basvod, the Prelate. As has been noted, Prelates are augmented Sanshayum, extremely capable warriors, and Das proves just how capable as he's able to close the distance to Mark and snap the Spartan 3's neck. Eventually, Ash, Olivia, and Veda, and Mark's body are all recovered, partially with help from Spartan 2 Red Team. With Ash and Olivia hours from their last smoother injection, the first encounters between Red Team and the Ferrets are rather interesting, such as when Alice 130 holds Ash out of their recovery pelican to get him to calm down. This interaction was a long time coming, and it went about as well as one could expect, given the circumstances. At the same time, Pavium and Vortis, among the last of their clan now, discuss how to best frame recent events when they report to Let Valir. Vortis suggests that they can twist events to make it look like the Longshield clan held off the Keepers in Covenant long enough for the human Max strike, which Pavium contemplates. Castor and Inslan Gadogai also survive, Castor overlooking a molten lake that had once been the Citadel. He throws the Prelate's hard-like glaive, which Gadogai had managed to take from the Sanshayun Prelate earlier, into the lava, hoping that to be the end of Intrepid Eye. Now free of the bonds of his beliefs, Castor decides that he and Gadogai will not rest until all their enemies are dead. The book comes to a close, as these books often do, with an epilogue. More than a week after the main events of the book, the ship holds a funeral for Mark and others lost during the recent fighting. During the funeral, Veda finally meets Captain James Cutter and the two talk. Cutter does what he can to comfort Veda and asks if she and her ferrets will help continue the battle against the Banished. Naturally, they're eager to begin. And that concludes Halo Divine Wind, the third full book in Troy Denning's Ferret series, though hopefully not the last. When Divine Wind was announced, as excited as I was also worried that it might be used to essentially explain certain character absences away for Halo Infinite, sort of like what Ghosts of Onyx did for Blue Team so Chief could be a solo Spartan in Halo 3. Not only did those fears never come to pass, the book does an incredible job of following up on Halo Wars 2, Shadows of Reach, and the previous Ferret-centric stories. Moreover, the book does a great job setting up for even more exciting future events, perhaps even a Halo Wars 3. The Halo Wars community has been clamoring for more since Awakening the Nightmare capped off the Halo Wars 2 DLC offerings, and after reading Halo Divine Wind, I'm more excited for more content than ever. Can you imagine commanding Red Team alongside the Ferrets while fighting off Banished and Covenant forces? Gods, that would be a dream. But even putting that aside, the book itself was just a blast to read through. Veda and her ferrets are always exciting to read about, though the chemistry between Castor and Inslangado Guy was the highlight of the book. Their relationship had been an interesting hook for Shadows of Reach, but it comes to the forefront of the Keeper sections of the book. If you liked Gato Guy in Shadows of Reach, you'll love him all the more here. And again, I would love to see him as a real enemy in a Halo Wars sequel. I could go on, of course, the book is full of new lore and tidbits that could spawn dozens of lore videos. And after my most recent reread, I'm rather excited to talk about the future of the Sanshayum and the Covenant. But those are discussions for another day. In the months since it released, I'd say my enjoyment of Divine Wind has only increased, though I think the rating I gave it at launch still captures the essence of the book. I give Halo Divine Wind an 8.4 out of 10. Of course, these are just my thoughts, so let me know yours in the comments below, or consider joining the Halo Canon Discord and taking the discussion over there. And before we go, I'd like to give one last thank you to today's sponsor, NordVPN. If you want security and peace of mind while browsing the internet, check out nordvpn.com/halocanon to start your 2-year plan, which includes a bonus month at a huge discount. Thank you for watching, stick around for that Patreon shoutout, and until next time, this has been Halo Canon. First, I'd like to give a big thank you to our Horospis patrons. First, there's Hope, then we have Freight, Discombobulated Sycophant, Justin Montgomery, Man in the Dark, Keisha Dila, Daddy Anarchy, Great Scott Productions, Jumpy Sucks Balls, Ever Corrado, and Embezzled True 1010. Thank you all for your amazing support of the channel. Next, I'd like to thank our theoretical patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or get a direct shout out, check out patreon.com/halocanon. You can simply support the channel or get additional benefits, such as behind the scenes materials, including raw audio for upcoming videos, or even shoutouts like this. All patrons now get early access to certain videos as well, and your Patreon title will appear in the Halo Canon Discord. However, your continued viewership is more than enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and maybe even subscribing to the channel if you aren't already. If you really enjoy my stuff, turn on that notification bell so you can be among the first to see new videos when they release. But for all my fellow Canonites, keep on being awesome.